welcome, Antoinette, to this podcast. We're so pleased to have you here, and off the back of the brand new launch of your book. So can you tell us a little bit more about it and just what it's all about?
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you, Robert. It's lovely to be here. The book is called Confident Career Conversations. It launched on Amazon on the 15th of June. And it's basically a guide for HR professionals, managers and mentors to help them have meaningful conversations with employees about their career development and growth.
So what was the inspiration for the book itself? How did that actually come about?
Well, a lot of people don't realise that the average person spends nearly 90,000 hours at work in their lifetime.
Wow.
That is too long to be unhappy, in my opinion.
Definitely.
So, my mission is to empower people and help them realise their potential and fulfil their ambitions in their organisations.
Got it.
And that relies on managers having meaningful conversations with employees about their careers. But managers are obviously nervous about doing that and don't feel they've got the skills or confidence to do that. Mm-hmm. And the book is about providing them with some practical tools and questions so that they can build their confidence and have those conversations effectively.
Okay. So the book is more aimed for managers or the people who want to have career conversations?
Yeah, so that might be managers, it might be mentors, it might be HR professionals. It would help employees as well, because obviously they can see it from their angle. Mm-hmm. But the thing that sets the book apart from other career books is that it's focused on the managers and the role that they play in supporting their employees to develop their careers.
Got it. And you're right. You spend a lot of time at work and you've got... you generally kind of tend to have one-to-ones or things like that set up and in place. But I guess nobody ever really trains the managers to enable this to happen, right? So this book really is meant to be able to help them, yeah?
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. So in terms of the book itself and where it comes from, how did it all, I guess, get started down this route to this book? Have you done other books before?
I have. So this is my second book. My first book was called Grow Your Geeks. Right. It's a handbook for developing leaders in high-tech organisations.
Very good.
But I've always been passionate about career development in organisations. So I've spent a career managing my career and making career changes, actually. Mm-hmm. So my first ever job was actually developing washing powders for Procter & Gamble.
Right.
P&G. But I got involved in training and development and I decided I preferred people to washing powders. So I wanted to move into HR. But that opportunity wasn't available in the organisation at the time.
I see.
So I decided to take voluntary redundancy. And because P&G is an excellent organisation, I got career coaching as part of my redundancy package.
Okay.
And it was just revolutionary. Mm-hmm. It really helped me think through who I was, what I had to offer, what I wanted out of my career, and how I could go about getting that. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it was such a shame that people only got that kind of support to leave an organisation rather than to stay and develop within the organisation.
Right, makes sense.
So I've been on a campaign ever since to bring career conversations into organisations. And, that's what my company does now. We specialise in career management and mentoring. And the idea of the book was to make that knowledge and skills accessible to a wider population.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. In terms of the book itself, do you have any stories or I suppose anecdotes which are kind of just come out of your mind right now to explain a little bit more about the things that were inspiring in it, I guess?
Well, I guess one of the stories that seems to resonate with people is actually about my own failures as a manager, if you like.
Right.
So in spite of this being an area of passion for me, I had an experience where one of my own team, she was in the office really early. So she was there when I arrived. And first thing, she asked to see me. And, as a manager, uh-oh,
Yeah, yeah.
this isn't going to be good.
Yeah, yeah. It tends to happen when like the employee approaches the manager or the employer.
Yeah, exactly. And sure enough, she, looked at me and, she looked very anxious. And she said, "I'm really sorry, Antoinette. I've got to give you my resignation.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
going back to Australia."
Okay.
And I was completely shocked. And quite hurt
Yeah.
and taken aback.
Yeah.
She was Australian, but she'd,
Yeah,
clue.
yeah.
But she'd recently married a Brit. I thought she was settled in the
Oh,
UK.
she was going to stay.
I thought she was happy in her
Right.
career. And all of that was me making assumptions.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe I even thought I'd had a conversation with her about it. But clearly I hadn't, and she hadn't felt able to share her plans.
Yeah, yeah.
And we did get it all sorted out. We were a global company and we were able to transfer her to Australia, and she stayed there and she became head of HR for the whole of Asia Pacific.
That's brilliant.
So it was all a happy ending, but it could have been that much easier if we'd planned it
Yeah.
rather
yeah.
than reacted to a situation.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a lot of that out there that managers assume they know what their people are looking for.
Right.
But unless you have a proper conversation about it,
Yeah.
that's all it is. It's assumptions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, whenever you've got really good employees as well, it's always the case, I would imagine, that even though you're trying to develop them, you want to keep them in the organization, there are going to be plenty of other things out there that as more competent and as more skilled they get, they just want to go and explore, right? So
Yeah, well, I often think that because of lack of conversations, it's often easier for somebody to manage their career by applying for a job elsewhere. Because other companies are advertising what's available, they're tapping them on the shoulder, they're
Yeah.
saying, "Come and work for us." And I believe that we need to re-recruit our best people. Every organisation, makes these promises about career development as part of their recruitment strategy.
Yeah.
And, great, you get rock stars that way. But if you don't follow through on that and provide that growth and those development opportunities, then you're not going to keep those rock stars.
yeah, I can see that happening. It's really great to see that, we've got managers now, with the help of this book, being able to now have those kind of career conversations with people who are under their care. What other things are you hoping that people will get out of the book?
I think the key thing is that it's a very practical book. It actually gives the managers a set of powerful solution-focused questions to plan and frame and structure and hold these conversations. So it's not just theories that people need to then work out, how do I apply this? It's actually a framework and a toolkit.
Right.
And that's what we call it, the Career Conversation Toolkit.
Yeah.
That gives managers pretty much everything they need to then go away and have the conversation.
Okay. So it's more than just a how-to book. It's like, this is the thing that you could do if you wanted to have these conversations. Brilliant. That's awesome. In terms of what's next after the book, are there anything that you're going to be doing off the back of the launch?
Yeah, interesting question. So the book is essentially the book of a training program that we run for managers.
Right.
So we run workshops for managers to help them build the skills and confidence to have these conversations. And we go into organisations and we train their managers to do that. But quite often, a large organisation will have a lot of managers, and to scale that training, we need to think of more affordable solutions. So what we're going to do next is launch a certification program so that in-house HR and training professionals can get everything they need to then deliver these workshops for their own managers.
Got it.
And therefore, that builds the capability of the organisation, not just in terms of the managers, but in terms of the people that are there to support the managers, the HR teams, the L&D teams.
Got it. Brilliant. That's awesome. So how did you get started with all of this HR and the books and writing? Where did it all, I guess, kind of stem from?
Yeah, well, I said, I left P&G in order to move into training, and then kind of develop my passion for career development in organisations, and that was essentially what I did. So before I set up my own business, I was 25 years in international learning and development roles. So Accenture, Avanade, which is a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft,
Right.
Excel Capital, as it was then, which is an insurance company in the City of London. And then 11 years ago, I set up my own business. Which is called Antoinette Oglethorpe Limited. Not very creative.
No, it is what it does.
And it's a training and coaching company, and we specialise in career management and mentoring. So, training managers to have career conversations, training employees to take ownership of their career development and prepare for those conversations, and then also training HR professionals in how they can design mentoring programs and training mentors and mentees to form valuable partnerships as part of that.
Brilliant. And was there like a switching point that allowed you to kind of say, okay, well, I'm doing this, but now I wanted to do it on my own when you were doing it for companies? What was the switching point?
Again, another career transition. This one following my heart, if you like. So I was working in London at the time, but I was about to marry a guy who's a Geordie, and his son lived in Edinburgh, and we were just too far away. So we decided to move back to Newcastle, which is where we'd originally met at Newcastle University.
Wow.
And my job, which was a very head office job and large company job. There weren't large company head offices in Newcastle. And I'd always had a little bit of a hankering of thinking, oh, one day I'd like to go it alone.
Yeah.
I think most employees wonder about that at some point in their careers. So I thought, now's the moment. So that was when I left corporate life.
Yeah. So you bit the bullet, and then afterwards you started your own thing. How did you find it, and what were some of the challenges that you had?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think I was quite naive, and probably that's a good thing. I think
most people when they first start will be, yeah.
Yeah, and if you weren't, you wouldn't do it, probably.
No.
So I originally went in to partnership with a more experienced consultant. And that was brilliant because I didn't have to worry about sales and marketing. I just had to worry about delivering as a consultant. And so, the importance of service and quality delivery. But then when I, really kind of set up my own business, then it's everything. And the biggest challenge is probably sales and marketing. I see people setting up on their own, and they're always looking to build their technical skills. So, become a better coach, become a better trainer. Well, actually, they've got 20, 25 years experience of that. They know how to do that. It's the other business stuff that they don't necessarily know and that you have to learn if you're going to run a business.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a lot of people are exactly that way. They've kind of been in a position before, but once they started to do it for themselves, they then begin to see that it's a lot more difficult than what they'd probably originally envisaged. So I completely get that. I've had that myself. You touched on a few things, so like sales and marketing and, obviously like developing the business from the ground up. How are you able to find the help to be able to do that then? Is it through your networks or how do you do it basically?
Yeah, well, I think first you have to do it for yourself. So it's just as well I'm passionate about learning and development because you have to do a lot of learning and development.
Definitely.
So, I'm an avid business book reader. So I read a lot of business books. And then I've been very fortunate to be involved in a couple of accelerator programs. So there was one called Key Person of Influence, which is based on the book by Daniel Priestley. So I participated in that. And then another through the NatWest Accelerator program, which is how you and I met.
Yes, yes.
And both of those have not just given me learning in terms of knowledge and skills, but given me access to brilliant support networks. People that all run different businesses, all have different knowledge and skills to mine, and therefore that I can either just lean on for support and a listening ear, or employ because I outsource things like branding, for example.
So it's, I guess, potentially like expanding your network through attending these programs and so on. And then afterwards you find out about something new and then you're able to kind of leverage that for the benefit of your business. That's perfect. So when, and this is a term that most employees would have heard throughout their employment experience, key performance indicators, right? And everybody kind of goes, oh, I don't want to go to another one of those meetings because I need to say what I've done, how long I've done it, where, I'm being measured against myself. Are they still a good way of measuring how, I guess, the performance of an employee is going?
It's part of it. So obviously every business will also have those key performance indicators, and the role of employees is to help deliver those.
Yeah.
So whether they be sales targets or financial metrics, or conversion rates or whatever it might be. So the metrics are important in terms of the what they do and what they produce.
Yeah.
But equally important is the how.
Yes.
And organizational culture is based on how people behave, and people behave in line with the values of the organization, or they should be.
Yes.
And so it isn't enough to just say, I want these high sales figures, say if it's a salesperson, because you don't want those at any cost.
Yes.
You want those delivered in a way that is in line with the values of the organisation. So you also need to be evaluating and giving feedback on how people behave.
Right.
That side of it as well.
I think that's definitely something that most businesses would probably completely agree with. Like, they will be able to set key performance indicators for things like sales targets and so on. But I don't think there's ever really much measurement which is then aligned or attached to how those things are actually delivered as well. And you're saying, I guess, that they should be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we know what the employees are going for in terms of they've got this particular sales target, and we kind of know how it is that they need to progress with it. What is a good employee? What would you class as somebody who's really great for the business?
Well, I think every manager will want an employee that shows initiative and takes ownership and responsibility, not for just delivering what they need to deliver, but for actually contributing to deliver the vision of the organisation. So, going over and above the parameters of their job, and being proactive and showing initiative. But I think one of the other skills that's really important for all employees these days is adaptability. We can't just set objectives for 12 months and think that they're going to stay relevant.
Yeah.
Everything is changing all the time. All the advances in technology that we're seeing
Absolutely.
these days. I mean, it's just massive. And so being able to adapt and be flexible, I think is one of the most important skills these days.
Right. I definitely agree with that. So now we know what a good employee potentially looks like. What about a good manager? What's a good manager doing?
Management and leadership is all about influence. So it's about achieving through others.
And sorry, just to cut you off there, is there a difference between leadership and management?
Well, you'll get lots of different answers to that question, I think. So for myself, I think management is about making sure things continue as is. and
Right.
managing the current situation.
Got it.
Leadership is about moving to something new. And, so it's much more future focused rather than current focused.
Got it.
And so then, most people have a responsibility to try and do both.
Just coming back to the original question, which was we spoke about what's a good employee and what are their attributes. What about a good manager? What are their attributes?
And so both management and leadership are all about influencing. It's about achieving through other people. So it's about having a focus not just on the task that needs to be done, but actually focusing on the people through which those tasks need to be completed. So whether that be direct reports in terms of team members or peers that those managers and leaders are working with, or the people that they're reporting to, actually influencing those scenarios and putting relationships on the to-do list.
I often struggle. I mean, personally, with our own business, with certain things. So some tasks need to be done quite immediately because we need clients, or we need to meet clients' requirements and so on, for something that needed to be done yesterday, for example, where you don't really have the time to be able to say, well, kind of nurture, coach people and that type of thing. It just needs to get done. But then you've got other projects which take a little bit more time and you've got more ability to prepare. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do both sides have to be flexible then in their approach to the way how they work?
They do. I think we are all too busy. We're all really busy. And whenever I coach leaders, generally what gets lost is that preparation and that focus on individuals. And whether it be preparing for a meeting, whether it be preparing for that one-to-one, whether it be preparing to have a career conversation with somebody, actually making time for preparation to think about how you want to influence the people you're meeting with, rather than just bouncing from one meeting to the next, which tends to happen. So carving out space in the diary to work on these relationships and on the business rather than just in them.
Yes.
Yes, it's not easy to do, but not doing it is dangerous. It's a bit like, none of us have time to exercise. None of us have time to cook properly.
Yes.
But if we don't exercise and we eat fast food and takeaways all the time, we will end up getting sick.
I guess if we're putting it like really into that analogy, it's probably like the stretching before you do the exercise as well, right? Because, you've got to prepare yourself to be able to execute what it is that you want to do. I see it. So with your HR consulting and coaching business, do you have any success stories that we can hear about?
So we are a training and coaching company, and we specialise in training managers and employees to have meaningful career conversations. And we work with a number of UN agencies, and one of the agencies we were working with, they had a very high engagement rate, but one of the areas that came out in their engagement survey was that people weren't particularly satisfied with career development in the organisation. And they had a group of high potential individuals that they really wanted to obviously keep in the organisation, but they knew that they weren't having these career conversations with their managers and therefore were at risk of being disengaged and potentially deciding to move elsewhere.
Right.
So we trained the managers of this group to have career conversations, and we trained the employees within that group to take ownership of their careers and prepare for career conversations. And as a result, they did measurements before and after in terms of how many career conversations were taking place and how people felt about the career opportunities within the organisation. And after the training, 82% of employees reported that they'd had more conversations with their manager about their careers, and 92% of those that had career conversations, said they felt more positive about their future in the organisation.
That's a great story.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you mentioned you had some other stories as well, do you?
Yeah, so I also do individual coaching, and they're always very rewarding.
Yes.
When you work with somebody who really wants to develop and is really coachable and just takes away great ideas, it's very inspiring. And there's one lady I'm working with at the moment, and she's a senior leader. She's the only lady in a senior team of men. She's quite introverted in relation to her colleagues, who are much more noisy and extrovert. And she's also quite quietly spoken. And she has received feedback throughout her career that she needs to get her voice heard. Now, I have to say, her colleagues also need to make space for her, but she has been working on getting her voice heard and making sure that her contribution is not just heard but acted on.
Yeah.
And she's made such amazing strides in this, in terms of thinking about action she can take, from projecting her voice, from actually people don't listen, just not letting that go on, but actually saying, hold on a moment, I don't think you heard me, and making sure that people heard her contribution. Because when it's heard, it's incredibly powerful, because she comes at things from a very different angle to some of her colleagues. So it's really important that that diversity of thought is all identified and considered in their decision making.
And that's definitely going to benefit the organization in the long term, because they're making the most out of that individual as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I used to work in a corporate, and I understand, the function of HR, human resources. But generally speaking, when the managers in the corporate used to go and approach HR, it was either for one of two reasons. That is, we're looking for more people, we need to hire X, Y, Z. Or they've got an issue with someone. Those were probably the only two reasons why they'd go to HR. Surely there must be more there.
Yes, there should be. I think HR gets a bad press in lots of organisations as being the hire and fire team, or sometimes even considered as the business prevention unit.
Right.
When actually they're quite the opposite. There is no organisation that can succeed without its people, and HR is the partner to the business in ensuring that all people matters are taken care of. Everything from yes, recruitment, but through to engaging, developing, retaining, ensuring enjoyability at work, in terms of employee experience, in ensuring employability at work in terms of learning and development, as well as some of the more thorny areas to do with underperformance or lack of fit in the organisation. So HR should be true partners in the business. And like all partnerships, that takes two parties to work at for it to be a true partnership. And
Definitely.
certainly, the colleagues I know in HR work very hard at being those partners. We hope that business colleagues will see that value and equally embrace that partnership.
Amazing. And in terms of what are the kind of trends which are coming through human resources right now, do you see anything that's likely to impact the industry as a whole as well?
Yes, I mean, there's two that seem to be very current at the moment. The first is hybrid working, which is a really interesting one because it's now part of the norm. It obviously started with COVID when we were all working remotely, and then it's never returned to where it started.
Yes.
We now have this hybrid model. And who knows where it'll end up. But for now, it's hybrid. And I think one of the risks at the moment is that when COVID was current and prevalent, we're all working remotely, everyone made great effort and strides to connect with people on a human-to-human level and on a social level. So outside of just one-to-ones, there were virtual coffees, there were socials, there was all sorts
Yes.
to keep people connected and a sense of belonging. COVID is now, it's not as prevalent. We're back mixing. Hybrid working is still here. And that means people aren't working together all day, every day. They're still working remotely. But I don't see the same effort going into people making those connections and connecting just as human beings on a social basis.
Yeah.
And I think that's a risk.
I remember that there was like a thing on a Friday afternoon. Everybody would like finish at 4 and, bring drinks or something, or that kind of socialization, but remotely.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's not much of it happening nowadays.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then the other one, of course, is technology, and in particular at the moment, artificial intelligence. And that will have a huge impact. That will change the way people's roles are designed. So they have a huge impact from a careers perspective. And I know some people feel quite vulnerable about that. But it also creates great opportunities. And this is not the first technological revolution we've ever been through.
Yes,
and
true.
Every technological revolution brings change, and change is, difficult for people and it's uncertain, but it also brings great opportunities.
Yes.
So I think both managers and employees will need support in terms of how they adapt to this change, but also how they embrace the value that artificial intelligence will offer.
Yes. Do you think that's something that needs to be, I guess, more encouraged in the workplace through, experimentation, kind of almost giving employees the ability to say, well, look, experiment with these tools, right?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a conversation I've had with my team members. I think every employee should be looking at how can artificial intelligence make me more productive in my job. How can it add value? I don't think it's something to be scared of. I think it's something to be embraced. We're all too busy, all got too much to do. Here's a tool that might actually help us, as long as it's used correctly.
Yes, for
like
sure.
All tools, in unskilled users' hands, it can do more harm than good.
Yes.
But yes, I think that's something that can be really exciting for everyone.
It's part of their KPIs, maybe.
Maybe. Thinking about how you'd measure that, but yeah.
Yes, that's true. Do you ever think that artificial intelligence should pick the person that is employed in a company?
I think it can add value to that process. It will never do away with humans is it doesn't have the emotional intelligence and doesn't have the conversation, and that connection on a human-to-human basis is really important. I believe there are AI interviews happening. It's not something I've experienced, but certainly in terms of drafting a job description, you could tell ChatGPT, what the key responsibilities are and job title, and it would draft something that you can then work on. You can't ever just take the answer. That's using the tool really bluntly, and that's dangerous. But in terms of accelerating the process and shortcutting the process, I think it has huge value it can add. In my own world, so training and development, and career development, if a manager was to say, right, I have this employee, their strengths are these, their areas for development are these, they aspire to this role, what should be on their development plan? I think ChatGPT would do a pretty good job on a starter for 10 on that.
Oh, very good. We might try it. So in terms of things that can help HR to get better, do better in the workplace. Have you got any recommendations?
Yes, I suppose. I mean, firstly, I would encourage HR professionals to develop their general business skills so that they can properly partner with the business. Every professional needs to have strong influencing skills. So an organisation is a dynamic and often complex system, and it's about influencing that system. And so, influencing skills are important. And then obviously I'll promote my own programs. So, we run workshops to help HR professionals and managers and mentors have career conversations with their employees. And not all HR professionals would be trained in that area. So that's an area for development. We also train employees to take ownership of their own career development and have career conversations with their managers. So, that's something HR professionals should be thinking of for themselves. Physician, heal thyself. Don't just help everyone else to develop their careers. Make sure you look after your own too. And then we are going to launch this certification program to help HR professionals then deliver that training internally. And I think given that most budgets are pretty stretched right now, and most training professionals I know are asked to do more with less, and to bring more in-house, then I'm hoping that will really help them, alongside the training that we provide to support mentoring programs, which again is a really valuable and budget efficient development initiative, but still needs to be set up in an organisation.
So we'll finish off with a final question. If you have any advice that you could give to somebody who is potentially looking at becoming a career coach, what would that be? Yeah,
there's some fantastic programs out there to train career coaches. I myself trained with Rob Nathan at Career Counselling Services, so I would recommend that program. But beyond that, I would say it's about thinking who you want to support. So there's lots of different careers, lots of different fields. The skills of career coaching are the same no matter what field. But do you want to specialise in helping mothers return from maternity leave? Do you want to specialise in helping graduates get their first job after university? Do you want to specialise, like me, in helping people develop their careers within organisations? Do you want to specialise in helping people make career transitions? So career coach is quite a broad umbrella term. But it's ultimately about thinking, who do you want to help, and who do you feel you are best placed to help?
Brilliant. And speaking of help, if anyone is out there looking for any of the wonderful services that Antoinette offers, please definitely check it out on the YouTube channel. We'll have it in the description area, and you can find out much more about Antoinette and all of the services she provides. So thank you very much for watching this podcast. If you'd like to like and subscribe, that would be awesome. Antoinette, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's been lovely.
You're welcome.